And so without further ado, I'm going to bring Dan up here. Where did he go? Oh, right, he's right there. Okay. I didn't get a bio from you, so I'm going to do my own improv bio. So Dan sat on the board of London Cycling for a couple of years and was awesome and a rock star, and then now is the executive director there. And so he loves to cycle. He has children. He used to work at the LTC. I don't know if you wanted me to add that, but I did. And generally, Dan is just lovely. If you haven't had the chance to meet him, I recommend staying around afterwards and just chatting, because he knows a lot about cycling, but he also is just an awesome human being. So I will invite you up. You can either talk in this mic, but you have to like really lean in, or you can speak loudly.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to start my talk here. Choosing how we get from here to there is a decision we make routinely every day. Should I drive or take the bus? Should I stop at the grocery store on the way home from work? Maybe I'll buy that gift on the way to pick up the kids. And for many of us in the room, we also consider the environmental impact of our choices. We may consider the packaging when ordering takeout, or we bring a thermos if we know we're getting coffee that day, or we'll offer our free time to volunteer for conservation efforts, et cetera, et cetera. But for many of us, that decision to choose low carbon transportation, like walking, cycling, or riding the bus, can be very difficult. Our streets are unsafe, it's too cold, it takes too long, I don't have the right gear, it's confusing, I don't feel like I belong. And these are all fair reasons, by the way. London was built predominantly to make driving the easiest choice. Things are far apart, roads are built for moving cars quickly, transit is underfunded, and cycling and walking facilities are often an afterthought. When we think about the sobering IPCC report that states we have 11 years to reduce our 2010 emissions by 45%, we need good low-carbon options in a hurry. In Canada, the transportation sector accounts for 24% of our country's carbon equivalent emissions. Emissions from passenger transportation alone have increased 17% from 1990 to 2015. And this doesn't include the oil and gas sector, which is the largest emitter in Canada. And finally, to add insult to injury, our politicians don't seem ready to veer from the status quo. We observe other cities that have prioritized walking and cycling, but we turn up our noses and say, that wouldn't work here. Londoners love their cars too much. To me, it's like saying Oliver loves gruel, because that's what he eats, even though food, glorious food, could be an option. I wrote a poem about this place of despair. No tax on carbon, we're trumped on coal, we own a pipeline with no Kyoto Protocol. BRT is MIA, and Ontario is driven by Ford. Rising temperatures, little hope for the Paris Accord. If I ended my talk here, the brewing co-op would sell a lot of beer, but I'd never be asked to speak again. Yes, it's easy to be discouraged. I felt frustrated too by the necessity of driving, or when I didn't have access to a car, I felt frustrated by the lack of good options. But I wouldn't be here today if I didn't believe passionately in the possibility of a better way. A future where London's streets are designed for people, not cars, and we can all choose to walk, bike, or bus, or drive with ease. And I don't think this is a fantasy. I'm convinced that more and more people want to make changes to reduce our collective emissions and halt climate change. They just need some help. A growing number of people see the city not as a place to escape from, but a place to live, work, or visit. This changes how we view our city and our streets. Our streets become places for people first and for moving vehicles second. Did you know our roads represent 70 to 80% of the total public space in cities? This is a huge opportunity to reallocate space for people, whether on bikes or on foot. So how do we get from here to there? How do we make this a reality? I want to give some reasons why cycling has a significant role to play in reducing our carbon emissions, providing a viable alternative to driving, and making a more vibrant city. The first reason, most of the trips we take could be made by bike. The average trip length in London is 5.8 kilometers. That's roughly a 20-minute bike ride at a reasonable pace. The second reason, we're already cycling. 40% of Canadians reported cycling in the previous 12 months. That means they own a bike and they know how to ride it. 40%. The third reason, cycling can substantially reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. This is kind of a confusing stat, but in Europe, they have really stringent goals for their carbon reduction efforts by 2050. And they're saying that high rates of cycling can achieve 12 to 26% of the total necessary carbon reductions from the transportation sector. So cycling can play a big role in reducing emissions. The fourth reason, cycling infrastructure makes it safer for everyone. In Ottawa, after installing protected bike lanes on Laurier Ave, there were 50% less collisions involving pedestrians, 30% less involving cyclists, and 10% less involving motor vehicles. The fifth reason, we have a good foundation to build on. London has 40 kilometers of Thames Valley Parkway, and it's getting better as we fill in some critical gaps in the coming years. We opened our first cycle track on Colburn this summer and have plans for the second on King Street this spring. The sixth reason, our cycling culture is growing. There are new bike shops that support cycling for transportation. The London Bicycle Cafe, N+1, and there's a Squeaky Wheel Bike Co-op that aims to be a cycling community hub and provides affordable used bikes. Finally, and this is anecdotally, but I think there are more cyclists out there on the streets today than there were ever before. Despite all this potential for more cycling, why aren't people in London choosing to ride en masse? Why do we still hear drivers yelling at us to get off the road? How do we make cycling a normal way to get around and support it as such? How do we convince 5 or 10% of Londoners to start riding regularly to truly make a difference? Here are 3 steps I see as necessary for London to grow the number of people on bikes immensely. First step, we need to build more cycle tracks and allocate more money to cycling to do so. Cycle tracks, or protected bike lanes, whichever term you like best, improve actual safety, but also perceived safety, which is really important. People want to feel safe by separating vehicles from people on bikes. They also lead to large increases in the number of cyclists. For instance, Hamilton has doubled the number of people on their cycle track on Cannon Street in 2 years, up to 1,000 daily riders. On Bloor Street in Toronto in the first year, it increased by 50%, up to about 5,000 a day. Over 5 years in Ottawa, Laurier Ave saw an increase of 330% riders. So huge numbers of increase. And like I mentioned, we need more money to build this. The current budget for cycling is around $800,000 a year, while we spend, depending on how you look at it, around $100 million a year on roads. In many ways, you get what you pay for. To put it in perspective, a 1 kilometer stretch of Dundas slated for cycle tracks was estimated to cost $2 million. So if we keep the budget we have, we can do that 1 kilometer maybe over 2.5 years. We need more money. The second step that I think is really important is we need low-cost solutions that can be implemented quickly. Big changes like cycle tracks can be expensive and they take a long time to have built. Solutions like road diets, where road space is reallocated to bikes, is a quick win that only requires paint. Also, reducing speed limits is a no-cost solution that is inexpensive and effective. Slowing cars down makes it safer for everyone and more enticing to cycle. And finally, the third step, we need to encourage people to ride now and support them along the way. I guess I've said a lot of things that might scare people, but there are many trips that don't require a Medal of Valor to ride your bike. There are thousands of Londoners already riding safely, and the more people choosing to ride make it safer for everyone. Breaking down stigmas that a bicycle is for recreation only or that it's too dangerous is important work. So London Cycle Inc., the organization I work for, is a not-for-profit engaged in this urgent work. We advocate for better cycling infrastructure, encourage choosing to cycle through events and campaigns, and support current cyclists through the Squeaky Wheel Bike Co-op. We have a bold ambition to make London a cycling city, but we need the environmental sector's support to make it happen. That's your support. So I'd like to challenge you personally to support our work in one of the following ways. The first one is just ride your bike. It doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be far. But start thinking about one trip you could make by bike. Maybe it's getting the mail, visiting a friend, or going out to eat. And I'll dispel the myth that you need a bunch of gear. Cycling is for people in suits or skirts or slacks or scrubs. The second step you can take personally to support our work. Become a member of London Cycle Inc. Our advocacy efforts at City Hall become much more credible if we have a large and engaged membership. The $20 a year it costs helps fund our advocacy work that can't be funded through grants. And I brought some memberships here tonight in case anyone's interested. The third way you can support us personally is support an advocacy campaign. We'll be campaigning for an increased cycling budget over the next year. We'll be campaigning for bike lanes in both directions on Dundas in the very near future. And there'll be more along the way. If you can sign up for our newsletter and write your local councillor to encourage them to make London truly a cycling city. These small actions made collectively will reduce our carbon footprint and make our city a more vibrant place to live. More people cycling will improve our health, our happiness, and keep more money in London. As more people cycle, the safer and more normalized it is, and the easier it is for others to follow suit. With the urgent demands of climate change upon us, with our roads becoming more congested, now is the time to act to support a more cycle-friendly London. That's all I have tonight. I'm happy to talk more if you have any questions or thoughts. And thanks for listening so well.
So Dan will be here if you want to chat with him. I'd recommend buying a membership. I bought one just to vote in their AGM because I thought that was even worth it just to vote. But I also have a squeaky wheel and a London Cycle Link membership. I don't know, are you still doing that like little promo? So if you buy both, it's $35. So worth it. And I also committed to bike more to work next year when it's not as cold. So well, this year. So like probably March to November at least once a week. But my partner who's here actually bikes to work from March to November every single day, and pretty much until it snows on the TBP. So it is possible, and he wears his work clothes to do it. So you're right, you can wear it in a suit. So yeah, thank you all for coming. Sign up for a newsletter. Come to the next one. It's going to be in March. And otherwise, I'll be around too if you have any questions or want to chat. So keep mingling. Maybe before you leave, my challenge to you is to talk to one person that you're not sitting beside. So talk to one person, okay? Awesome. Okay, thanks guys. No, I lied. I just wanted to thank the events committee because I actually didn't organize this tonight. So Andrea took the lead on this, but the events committee supported, and Kayleen's taking photos, and we've got a couple of people doing some film for some videos we're doing. So I want to thank all of them as well because they're awesome volunteers in the environmental sector, and my board member who is here too. That's awesome. So thanks guys.